Hello, this is the online recording for Manitou Springs Transportation and Mobility Master Plan. The presentation was originally provided to the Mobility Summit in late April 2019. The Transportation and Mobility Master Plan, or Mobility Study as some are calling it, is jointly funded by Manitou Springs, Colorado Springs, and the Cog Railway. Those three entities have hired Kimley Horn to lead the planning process and create the Transportation and Mobility Master Plan. So let's discuss why we're planning and why we're completing this mobility study. This study is looking at transportation and mobility, and in particular how the transportation system and personal mobility can impact economic development, urban design, placemaking, tourism, and almost all aspects of a community's day-to-day life. Transportation infrastructure is usually the most significant investment a community makes, and it's important to ensure that those investments can be leveraged to meet the goals and visions for the community.
What necessarily is a mobility master plan? It's an integrated strategy to enhance personal mobility and support the goals of other adopted plans in Manitou Springs, such as Plan Manitou. Through this planning process, we'll identify and select and prioritize actions that best support the goals of these previously adopted plans, and come up with a refined list of implementation strategies and funding strategies to implement those goals. Most importantly, the goals and implementation strategies will be developed through a highly transparent and public process.
As mentioned, Plan Manitou is an important adopted plan that this Transportation and Mobility Master Plan seeks to refine. Plan Manitou had many plan elements, as you can see, including a transportation and mobility section. The transportation and mobility element of Plan Manitou's vision was our community has a safe, multimodal transportation network that balances the needs of our residents, visitors, and businesses, complementing our natural environment and cultural history. So even the vision for that individual plan element included aspects of many other elements of the comprehensive plan. So Plan Manitou sets the framework for this transportation and mobility master plan. It can later be refined by neighborhood and corridor plans such as Crystal Park Road and the Ruxin Functionality Study, but ultimately seeks to guide the regulations enforced by the city as well as the investments such as capital improvement and operation and maintenance. Next, we'll discuss the planning process behind the Transportation and Mobility Master Plan. The planning process kicked off in February of 2019. The project team has been collecting data, performing an existing conditions analysis, along with conducting stakeholder interviews to learn from the perspectives of those stakeholders. This, along with the framework from Plan Manitou, will inform the goals for the project and the goals for the eventual plan. In late summer, the project team will formulate scenarios and strategies that seek to best accomplish those goals, and the planning process will finish with a formal plan that includes implementation and funding strategies for the city. There will be many opportunities for community engagement throughout the entire planning process. This is including online engagement, such as online surveys, like the one associated with the Mobility Summit, and the Community Voice Forum on the city's website. There will also be regular Project Advisory Committee meetings, or PAC meetings, that is composed of different stakeholder groups, and 3 scheduled community workshops like the Mobility Summit. The mobility assessment phase included stakeholder interviews where the project team was able to meet one-on-one with the different stakeholder groups. The goal setting phase will include pop-up events where the project team goes to a festival or event in Manitou Springs, such as the Wine Festival or the Coffin Races, but those are yet to be determined. The scenarios and strategy phase will include demonstration projects that looks to change some aspect of the transportation system for a short period of time in order for the project team to gather community feedback about that change. And then finally, there will obviously be the public hearings and associated engagement with the formal plan adoption. The decision-making process begins and ends with the Manitou Springs community, with all goals, strategies, and actions being guided by the input and feedback from the community. The project team will continue to stay in contact with the various stakeholder groups to ensure plan coordination. The project advisory committee will also meet regularly to help with regular milestone decision-making alongside the executive committee, who are the funders of the project. And lastly, the plan will look to go through a formal adoption process through City Council, who is comprised of elected officials within the community. The Project Advisory Committee is composed of many of the key stakeholder groups, including the Colorado Department of Transportation, the Chamber of Commerce, the city, the mayor, El Paso County, Public Works, Mountain Metro Transit, SP Plus, some citizen representatives, among others. The executive committee, as mentioned before, is comprised of the three funders for the project, with Colorado Springs and the COG and Manitou Springs taking the lead. Now we'll go over what we've heard so far in the planning process. The project team held several stakeholder interviews, many of which were conducted over a 1-week period, including the Transportation and Parking Board, City of Colorado Springs, the Manitou Springs School District, ongoing transportation projects, as well as others. Some of the questions that were asked in these stakeholder interviews are similar to the ones we asked during the Mobility Summit, including what is working well, what could be improved, what should the city prioritize, how do the city's priorities align with the organization's priorities, and eventually what type of transformational transportation vision does each individual stakeholder group have for the city? After conducting these stakeholder interviews, we came out with several different themes or common topics throughout the different stakeholder groups. As you can see on the screen, there were many different common topics, and with all these topics, most were seen in both a positive and a negative light. For instance, many different stakeholder groups saw transit as a strength currently through Manitou Springs transportation system. However, almost all saw opportunities for improvement and saw weaknesses in the existing system. So all of these topics were both seen in a positive and negative light.
The project team summarized those hours of conversations into a series of emerging issue and opportunity statements. These statements will help begin to set a framework for the goals of the Transportation and Mobility Master Plan. The statements are as follows. Manitou Springs, unique issues demand unique solutions. Plan Manitou's transportation vision can only be achieved with a better alignment of transportation and mobility priorities between residents, business owners, and elected and appointed officials. Manitou Springs must manage its existing transportation and mobility resources more efficiently to continue being a world-class place to live, conduct business, and visit. Parking needs to be systematically addressed to benefit residents, businesses, owners, and visitors alike. Bicycle, pedestrian, and transit safety and connectivity must be enhanced to encourage more non-auto trips. And lastly, enhancing emergency access and the resiliency of the transportation network is critical due to Manitou Springs' natural conditions.
We'll now describe the content created and the materials that will be provided to facilitate the online survey that supplements that Mobility Summit. The stations found at the Mobility Summit and the topics for the survey are what's working well, what needs improvement, what is your transformational vision for Manitou, and how well do you agree with those drafted emerging issues and opportunity statements. Firstly is what is working well with the existing transportation and mobility system in Manitou Springs. We're hoping you give us your examples and your perspective on the different aspects of the mobility system in the city. Additionally, we're hoping you would give us what aspects of the transportation and mobility system needs improvement. What areas could the city do better on? What areas do you think our plan should focus in that improvement? The Mobility Summit and the online survey both sought to find your vision for the future of Manitou Springs. How do you believe the transportation and mobility system should look in the future? The photos are not meant to be exact replicas for what Manitou Springs could look like, rather to spark creativity and thought in how you believe the future will look or should look. And please note that these pictures on the slide vary slightly from those found in the online survey, simply due to response and feedback gathered at the Mobility Summit.
Next, we'll be asking for your level of agreement with those issues and opportunity statements presented earlier. For each statement, we'll be asking you to state your level of agreement from strongly disagree to strongly agree. We'll conclude with discussing next steps for the Transportation and Mobility Master Plan.
Project next steps for the community. Key is online engagement. All the materials from the Mobility Summit will be posted onto the city's website under the Transportation and Mobility Master Plan webpage. The online survey will be made available for an extended period of time so that people who are unable to make the Mobility Summit can provide their feedback. And there's a community voice page on the city's website that allows you to go and use it as a forum for staying engaged, posting ideas, and just talking with fellow community members on the Mobility Summit. There will also be the pop-up events, as discussed earlier, that will attend the different festivals and events in Manitou Springs. The project team will continue its research and continue the analysis from this community input, which will begin to formulate the goals and strategies for the eventual master plan. Thank you for watching this presentation. Please provide us your feedback in the online survey and sign up on the city's website to remain engaged and remain informed on the future aspects of the Transportation and Mobility Master Plan. That is the conclusion of this presentation.